Today I'm going to be talking about Alright, so Marvel released a new Disney Plus TV movie, and it's called Werewolf by Night, and the plot of the movie is pretty much this. A group of deadly monster hunters arrive at Bloodstone Temple to participate in a hunt to win the Bloodstone, and become heirs to the creepy, beast-filled property. Alright, let's get into the good parts of this movie. I think the first thing that I'll say is that it didn't feel like a Marvel project at all. It didn't feel like any of the Disney Plus shows that we've gotten. It definitely didn't feel like any of the movies that we got. And it was really just its own thing, which is a good thing. It didn't have any unnecessary jokes. Honestly, I don't even think it had any jokes at all. Didn't have any unnecessary gags. And because the movie is only 50 minutes, it only has so much time to work with. And I think for the most part, I think it uses its time wisely. Another good thing that I'll say about this is actually the director himself, Michael Giacchino. Sorry if I mispronounced his name. And the reason why I say that is for someone who, at least from what I know, hasn't directed, and if he has, it probably wasn't that much. I thought he did a pretty good job with his directing. And if you don't know Michael Giacchino, he's a composer. He composed Spider-Man No Way Home. He composed the Batman score, and he keeps the streak going of, Batman movies not having any bad score for their Batman. But anyways, I think that if he ever decides to not be a composer, I think he could potentially be a director. Whether or not he's a good or great director will be up to him. Another good thing that I'll say about this movie is its cinematography. I do like black and white movies, and I do like the aesthetic of, having this like slasher or gore type of movie. And because it's black and white, there's a lot of creative shots that they decide to do that I think worked pretty well for the most part. I don't know any of the actors' names for this movie, but I will say that the main character who eventually, spoilers if you haven't seen this movie yet, but the character who eventually becomes a werewolf, I thought he did a pretty good job. I thought the main female lead in this movie did a pretty good job, and her relative of the female lead, I thought that she did a very good job as well. Before I get into my bad parts, I do have one last thing that I like to say that's a good thing about this movie, and it's the third act, I guess you could say, or the final part of the movie, where he eventually becomes a werewolf. And then the fight scene that he has, I thought was very, very creative. Like, I really enjoyed that fight scene. It was the first time in like a while where I watched a Marvel movie like final fight and I was actually engaged in it. And another thing, once again, I don't know the character's name, but it's this like weird creature thing, and like he's friends with the werewolf as well. He was an interesting character. I've heard some people say that he's not an interesting character or that he's boring, and some people love him. I'm more in the middle. I didn't have a problem with his character, but he's not like an all-time favorite of mine. Alright, let's get into the bad parts or criticisms that I have of this TV movie. And the first thing that I'll say is that, once again, I mentioned the first three characters, like the guy who turns into the werewolf, the main female lead, and the relative. I thought that all those three characters were developed pretty well for the most part, and I cared about their storylines. But I do wish that they developed the other Hunter's storyline, because they're only in like a first couple of minutes or the first half of this story, and then after we figure out everything, they're not really there, and their characters aren't developed that well for me to really care about them. And I don't think that's really, I guess, like, who I'd blame for this is just the Marvel themselves, because they don't give this movie enough time to tell all of the story. Like, you can tell that this movie definitely had more things that it wanted to do, but because it was only 50 minutes, there's only so much characters that you can develop in that period of time. Another criticism that I have is, once again, they're all trying to hunt down this beast thing, and I think eventually we find out that, the beast is actually, our main character. It's himself. But anyways, I wish they would have gone with that like hunter storyline just a bit more, because I thought it was an interesting thing, and it was cool to see the hunters fight each other, because they're all, remember, only one person can get this like bloodstone thing, so it's very competitive. But once again, because the movie is only 50 minutes, there's not much time for them to really, stay with, set pieces or with characters or with certain areas of the world. because of the 50 minutes. My next criticism is probably just a me thing, but I would say my biggest problem with this movie is the fact that it felt too long, which is kind of weird to say for a movie that's only 50 minutes. But I swear, like, throughout the 50 minutes, there are certain periods of this movie where I was just bored out of my mind. And it wasn't like I was just tired, because the moment I finished this movie, I was energized. So I don't think it was me. I just think that the movie was really boring at times. Another problem that I'll say before I give my score is the fact that, they say that this movie's like a horror movie. And honestly, when I heard that, I thought I was like, maybe some jump scares. And I guess there are some jump scares, but once again, it's a Marvel project. I'm not expecting high quality jump scares. And there weren't high quality jump scares. But I am kind of disappointed that it wasn't necessarily like a horror movie and was more of like, just a gory movie. Not necessarily like a scary movie. And maybe that's just the style of that time. I haven't really seen any movies from that period of time, so maybe that's just the way that horror movies were back then. But overall, guys, I'm going to go ahead and give Werewolf by Night a 7 out of 10. Have you guys seen Werewolf by Night? Let me know in the comments. Did you like it? Did you not like it? And those are my thoughts on that.